Welcome to the 10-Minute Econ series. I'm Captain-MJack. In Topic 1.4, we're diving into comparative advantage and why trade benefits both sides. Even if one country is better at producing everything, trade can still help, because what really matters is who gives up less to make something. That's the idea behind comparative advantage. Let's take a closer look. Let's start with a simple question. Why do people trade? Imagine for a second. What if no one traded? What would you have to go without? Well, basically everything you don't make yourself. No clothes, no phone, no car, no bananas, no internet, no healthcare. It sounds extreme, but that's the point. None of us produces everything we consume. Instead, we specialize. We focus on what we do best and trade with others for the rest. Now zoom out. What if people in one city couldn't trade with other cities? Or states couldn't trade with other states? People would have fewer choices. Prices might go up. Quality could go down. Life would get harder. So why do we trade? Because it gives us access to more goods, better goods, and cheaper goods. Trade improves efficiency, expands variety, and raises the standard of living. In short, specialization and trade make everyone better off. There are three absolutely essential concepts you need to understand to make sense of trade: absolute advantage, comparative advantage, and terms of trade. Let's break them down. Absolute advantage means being able to produce more of a good or service than someone else, using the same amount of resources. It's about efficiency and productivity. But trade isn't just about who can produce more. It's about who gives up less to produce something. And that's where comparative advantage comes in. Comparative advantage is about opportunity cost. If a country can produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another, it has a comparative advantage, even if it's not the most efficient overall. Finally, terms of trade refer to the rate at which two parties exchange goods. These terms are shaped by comparative advantage and opportunity cost, and they determine whether trade is mutually beneficial. We'll explore all three concepts in more detail with examples. Let's go back to the example from the previous video. In 10 seconds, I can draw 15 squares using my right hand, or 5 triangles using my left hand. Now imagine these aren't just doodles, they're actual goods that society needs. And let's say I'm the only producer in the world. That means these numbers, 15 squares or 5 triangles, represent the full limit of what we can produce with our current resources. Next, we'll see what happens when there's more than one producer. Now let's bring in another producer, Paula. Unlike me, Paula is ambidextrous. She can draw with both hands at the same time. In just 10 seconds, she can produce 16 squares with her right hand and 16 triangles with her left. Let's compare. I can make 15 squares. Paula can make 16. I can make 5 triangles. Paula can make 16. That means Paula can produce more of both goods in the same amount of time. So she has an absolute advantage in producing both squares and triangles. Absolute advantage simply means being able to produce more of a good with the same resources. Let's take the same idea from before, but now, instead of me and Paula drawing squares and triangles, imagine we're two different countries producing cars and planes. Suppose Paula's country, let's call it Paulistan, has more advanced technology and better resources. With the same amount of effort, Paulistan can produce more cars and more planes than my country. So just like before, Paulistan has an absolute advantage in both goods. But here's the key question. If one country is better at producing everything, does that mean the other country has nothing to contribute? Not at all. Trade isn't based on absolute advantage. It's based on comparative advantage, which is all about opportunity cost. For example, think about a group project. In your team, one person is really good at researching and writing, and they're also decent at public speaking. Another teammate isn't great at writing, but they're super confident and natural when giving presentations. So, who should do what? Even though the first person could technically do both the report and the presentation, it makes more sense for them to focus on writing, because that's where their strength really shines. The second teammate can handle the presentation, where their skills stand out the most. This way, each person does what they're relatively better at, and the team delivers a stronger overall result. That's comparative advantage. It's not about who's better at everything. It's about dividing the work so no one's wasting their best skills. Same idea applies in economics. When each country, or person, focuses on what they give up the least to do, and then trades or collaborates, everyone ends up better off. Next, we'll dive into the numbers and see exactly how comparative advantage works. Just like before, to calculate the opportunity cost, we start by looking at the two extreme points, how many cars and planes each country can make with the same resources. For Jack, he can produce 15 cars or 5 planes. To find the opportunity cost of one car, divide both sides by 15. One car equals 1/3 of a plane. So if Jack makes one car, he gives up 1/3 of a plane. Now flip it. What does one plane cost Jack? Divide both sides by 5. One plane equals 3 cars. So producing a plane means Jack gives up 3 cars. Now let's look at Paulistan. Paulistan can produce 16 cars or 16 planes. So one car equals one plane, and one plane equals one car. The opportunity cost is 1 to 1. Now here's the key insight. Even though Pakistan is more productive in both goods, Jack gives up less to make a car, only 1/3 of a plane. That's a lower opportunity cost than Pakistan's one plane. So Jack has a comparative advantage in cars. Meanwhile, Pakistan only gives up one car to make a plane, but Jack gives up 3. So Pakistan has a comparative advantage in planes. That's the foundation of smart trade. Jack should specialize in cars, Pakistan in planes, and they should trade to make both sides better off. Let's review the key differences between absolute and comparative advantage. First, absolute advantage is all about who can produce more with the same resources, or who uses fewer resources to produce the same amount. For example, Pakistan has an absolute advantage in both cars and planes, since it can produce 16 of each, while Jack can only produce 15 cars or 5 planes. But when it comes to trade, comparative advantage is what really matters. Comparative advantage is about opportunity cost, specifically, who gives up less to produce something. In this case, Jack has a comparative advantage in cars, because his per-unit opportunity cost is the lowest. So what should each country do? They should specialize in the good that is cheaper for them to produce, that is, the one where they have a comparative advantage, and trade for the rest. That's how both sides end up better off. Now that we know who should produce what, the next question is, what's a fair deal? That's where terms of trade come in. Terms of trade refer to the agreed-upon rate of exchange between two countries. Basically, how much of one good is traded for how much of another. Both countries can benefit from trade as long as the terms fall between their opportunity costs. In other words, the trade must allow each country to get the product at a lower opportunity cost than producing it on their own. Continuing with our earlier example, Jack is going to specialize in producing cars, and he wants planes. Pakistan is going to specialize in producing planes, and it wants cars. So what terms of trade would both sides agree to? Let's first look at it from Jack's point of view. If Jack makes planes himself, each plane costs him 3 cars. So he won't accept any trade that requires giving up more than 3 cars for one plane. For example, if Pakistan says 1 plane for 10 cars, Jack would say no, he could just make it himself for 3. So from Jack's side, the acceptable deal has to be 1 plane for less than 3 cars. Now let's look at Pakistan's perspective. If Pakistan makes planes on its own, each plane costs 1 car, so it won't trade 1 plane for less than 1 car. The deal from their perspective has to be 1 plane for more than 1 car. Put those together. Jack wants to give less than 3. Pakistan wants to get more than 1. So the acceptable trade is somewhere between 1 and 3 cars per plane. For example, 1 plane for 2 cars works for both. Jack saves compared to making the plane himself. Pakistan gains more cars than it would by producing them directly. It's also the same from the car perspective. Jack's opportunity cost for producing 1 car is 1/3 of a plane, so he wants at least more than 1/3 of a plane in return. Pakistan's opportunity cost for producing 1 car is 1 full plane. So to make it worth it, they'd only be willing to pay less than 1 plane per car. So from both sides, Jack wants more than 1/3 of a plane per car. Pakistan is only willing to give less than 1 plane per car. That means the acceptable trade range is somewhere between 1/3 and 1 plane. To make this easier when solving problems, here's a shortcut. Just calculate the opportunity cost for the same good in both countries. The terms of trade must fall between those two opportunity costs. For example, let's compare cars. Jack's cost for 1 car is 1/3 of a plane. Pakistan's cost for 1 car is 1 full plane. So any trade ratio for 1 car must fall between 1/3 and 1 plane. If it does, both sides benefit. Same thing for planes. Jack's cost for 1 plane is 3 cars. Pakistan's cost for 1 plane is 1 car. So any trade ratio for 1 plane must fall between 1 and 3 car. This method works for any pair of goods. Just pick 1 good, find each country's opportunity cost for it, and use those 2 numbers to set your trade range. Alright, so that brings us to the end of this lesson. To help you review, I'll leave you with some practice questions at the end of this video. The questions won't stay on the screen for very long, so make sure to pause the video and read them carefully. I'll post the correct answers in the comments section, so be sure to check them out. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments as well. And if you're enjoying this 10-minute economics series, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more short, focused economics lessons. Alright, this is Captain Jack, and I'll see you in the next one.